Urshifu is one of the most prolific Pokemon in the entire VGC scene, and anyone who's played a modern generation of VGC could probably tell you that it's at worst a very noteworthy Pokemon, and at best, it's easily one of, if not the most uncompetitive Pokemon of all time. Urshifu has two forms, and these forms make it so prevalent and competitive because you can't just tell at face value that you're fighting Single Strike or that you're fighting Rapid Strike Urshifu. While most players who have a bit of experience could probably say that they just go into games assuming it's Rapid Strike, as of recent, this has actually started to change, and the conversation has shifted more towards the focus of the Single Strike form of Urshifu. In the past, Rapid Strike was typically sought after for its ability to break through Focus Sash and sturdy users, and also the ease of access for taking advantage of Rain, which is one of Urshifu's best partners anyway, thanks to Tornadus, making it a very terrifying and prolific Pokemon in VGC that even resisted hits would have to cower at. But as of recently, there has been so much counterplay to Urshifu Rapid popping up in the metagame that Urshifu-Single Strike form is now considered the better Pokemon, and it even has completely overtaken Urshifu usage. So today, I want to break down why that is and what caused Urshifu's Single Strike form to rise to such a noteworthy status for usage. Not only this, but we're going to see if Urshifu's Single Strike form is just a fad right now, or if it really is here to stay as the best Urshifu form in Regulation F. While the Single Strike form of Urshifu didn't exactly overtake Rapid in usage until very recently, this story actually starts all the way back in the Teal Mask DLC during our Regulation E format. There was one Pokemon in particular that actually started the entire trend of even using Urshifu's Single Strike in VGC other than more niche situations, and that was none other than the Ogerpon forms, specifically the Hearthflame and Wellspring forms, which actually had a huge competitive influence over the metagame. One of the biggest reasons that Terra Dragon users even started becoming a topic of conversation in a format that one of the best, if not the very best Pokemon is Fluttermane, is all because of Ogerpon, Hearthflame, and Wellspring, which both demanded very different counterplay. For Hearthflame, you typically would have to run a Fire type in order to beat these, but that means that you're losing to Wellspring. And in order to beat Wellspring, you typically would want a Grass type, which gets completely eviscerated by Hearthflame. The only middle ground typing in the entire game that can take on Fire, Water, and Grass all at the same time is Dragon. And because of the prevalence in Ogerpon forms, with both Hearthflame and Wellspring forms having over 30% usage, it was pretty required that a lot of Pokemon shifted their Terra types from options like Water and Fire in order to try and combat Ogerpon with a Terra Dragon typing instead. One of the best uses of this was probably Goldango, which would see a lot of usage in Regulation E as an incredible special attacker, as this format also had pretty few options for special offense. While Urshifu Rapid would definitely struggle a bit in this Terra Dragon heavy format, and also with other prevalent options like Rillaboom and Amoonguss being in the tier, it still was typically seen as the better partner in this format due to the fact that you would typically pair this with Tornadus, which was one of, if not the very best supportive pieces in all of Regulation E. Tornadus Incarnate and Urshifu Rapid Strike formed a very dangerous combination that would go on to win several events during Regulation E, thanks to the fact that Tornadus could not only set Tailwind, but also Rain Dance with Prankster for Urshifu, allowing you to break past most resisted Pokemon with just 2 Surging Strikes, especially after a Terra Water, where you could even 2-KO Amoonguss of all Pokemon. While you would still see Urshifu single in the tier, especially on compositions that would run Trick Room, it was definitely few and far between, as a lot of these comps would still even go with Urshifu Rapid just because of the fact that it has such an incredible stab combination to most Pokemon, and it's overall a pretty low drawback piece to throw onto teams. Urshifu Single does have a lot of benefits it can give, such as an incredible Wicked Blow, which can blow past most Psychic types that your Psy Spam might fear, but at the same time, I could just throw on Urshifu Rapid and use any of the other viable Dark types that exist in Scarlet and Violet, as there are a lot of options, meaning that Single Strike had to really do a lot to justify itself on a team over another option. However, these changes in the format would only begin to start the trend in Single Strike's usage in VGC, and we have a lot of other Pokemon coming in the Indigo Disc DLC that will only expand upon these issues even more. Now that we set the stage, let's go into a few new introductions that actually took place in the Indigo Disc that will greatly change forever how Urshifu Rapid is perceived in the format. Starting off, we do have a new Paradox Pokemon with none other than Raging Bolt, which was considered the savior of Tornshifu compositions, as this was completely able to eviscerate both Tornadus and Urshifu with only a single team slot. This was a huge success for VGC, as most players were able to just throw a Raging Bolt on their team and now no longer lost to this combination of Pokemon that went to win half of the events in Regulation E. So this was already a really huge nerf to the Rapid Strike form. Considering Raging Bolt is one of the few Pokemon that natively has a Dragon typing that can completely wall out the Surging Strike's hits, but it also doesn't just lose to options like Ogerpon forms or get hit by Bleak Wind Storm for super effective. This was a really dangerous option for Torn Urshifu teams, and they had to quickly adapt, especially since Raging Bolt, despite its really low speed, had incredible bulk and a priority electric attack in the form of Thunderclap that functioned like a special Sucker Punch. Because of this, you couldn't even use an option like Landorus Therian in order to intimidate it down because Raging Bolt was natively a special attacker. So instead, we actually saw a huge rise in Landorus Incarnate in order to combat this. With just the ground stabs as well as Sludge Bomb, you could get a lot of benefit out of combating any common Raging Bolt Terra type, since you would either hit it for ground attacks, which hit super effective on its pre-Terra typing, or for Sludge Bomb, which is great for Terra Grass and Terra Fairy sets. And even Terra Water Raging Bolt wouldn't exactly be resisting either of your options. Landorus Incarnate also is just a much better wall breaker, and with Sandsear Storm getting 100% accuracy in the rain, this was actually a temporary solution to some of Urshifu Rapid's problems. But to say that it fixed everything would be far and away a stretch, considering how many new things came that will pressure the Rapid Strike Bear. This was only the beginning, and we had another new Paradox Pokemon that actually gives Urshifu far more issues than Raging Bolt, being none other than Iron Crown. Now I can't lie, I don't exactly expect Iron Crown to be nearly as much of a meta presence in the entire Regulation F format as Raging Bolt would be, just because of the fact that Psyspam hasn't really had the success that Rain has had in previous generations. But Iron Crown does have a few things going for it that does actually make this archetype very noteworthy in the current format. For starters, Psyspam now is an option to actually go really fast, as previously you would typically only see this on Weak Armor Armorage. Quark Drive on Iron Crown does mean you can actually get a speed boost to this Pokemon, and considering you have a 98 base speed stat, you actually perfectly creep Urshifu by 1 point. So since you can't just use a Choice Scarf to get around Iron Crown safely, what about just running this on Tailwind? Well, Tailwind teams still have to deal with the fact that Indeedee is your best partner, and it's natively a Trick Room setter. So if Iron Crown is running a special attack booster set, or even just sees that you're fighting against a Tailwind team, it could just go for Trick Room and set up Iron Crown into a position where it can still beat Urshifu anyway. So it's a really dangerous line to actually be playing Urshifu Rapid into, and it does cause a lot of issues for this water and fighting type Pokemon. Not only this, but with Psychic Terrain, you can't even really reliably go for a move like Aqua Jet to get a little bit of chip to revenge off Iron Crown, meaning that it can potentially just completely clean through your team if you don't have a partner like Rillaboom on the field, or an Ice Spinner option like Champao. Urshifu did adapt a little bit and will occasionally now run Ice Spinner for these types of matchups, or even just for Rillaboom, which is still a noteworthy check anyway. But that doesn't exactly stop Pokemon like Farigiraf, which also can block priority and really do a lot of damage to a lot of common Urshifu Rapid teams. Because of the fact that it's a Trick Room setter that doesn't get one-shot by Urshifu Rapid, it is definitely a problem Pokemon, especially seeing as it does carry a very powerful Psychic Noise, which is really prolific as it's already a really strong stab for Farigiraf as a way to combat Pokemon like Iron Hands that do run Drain Punch, and it can just completely one-shot the Rapid Strike form. Not only this, but Farigiraf does commonly run items like Citrus Berry and Rocky Helmet that make this matchup even more of a headache, and this doesn't even get into the fact that we still haven't even gotten into pre-existing counterplay to Rapid Strike, such as Amoonguss, Rillaboom, and Fluttermane that all do still exist and are very noteworthy options in Regulation F. To say that Urshifu Rapid has a slew of problems going forward is a real understatement, and we haven't even gotten into so many of the other options that can Terra around Urshifu, that can revenge Urshifu, that just exist and benefit Urshifu counterplay. So we really do have an uphill battle that we're fighting here to make this Pokemon viable. And that's not to say that it's a bad Pokemon in this format, but it definitely isn't the type of Pokemon that would just be completely dominating like we did see in Regulation E. So with that in mind, why not try Single Strike? Now, Urshifu-Single Strike form does actually have a lot of positive benefits under the current format, with the first one being that its stab of Wicked Blow is not actually gonna mine the Terra Dragon Pokemon. Now, this is huge because the signature move for Urshifu, getting a guaranteed crit, does actually give Urshifu a really strong niche in the format, as it doesn't even have to worry about common intimidators like Incineroar and the now still kind of prevalent Landorus Therian, meaning that you do have a really good advantage already as just an incredible wall breaker. Not only this, but Urshifu-Single Strike does have a positive matchup into a lot of common things that would be revenging Urshifu Rapid, such as Indeedee and Iron Crown Cores or Farigiraf, all of which will need to Terra defensively around Urshifu's Wicked Blow, which is a really big benefit here. Especially considering that Urshifu Single doesn't even have to worry about things like Farigiraf running Dazzling Gleam anymore, you now no longer even need to go for a defensive Terra to get out of this matchup, and instead you could just probably beat Farigiraf anyway if it doesn't respect your Terra typing. Not only this, this, but since Furgraph has now dropped Dazzling Gleam on its movesets, you could probably even just 1v1 it anyway without any worries, considering its best way to hit you would be Hyper Voice. So you're already in a much better position here anyway. The DLC also didn't really give us many fairy types that would be resisting Wicked Blow, as the only two really noteworthy options are Whimsicott and Primarina, but these are going to be strong checks to Rapid Strike regardless, so it doesn't really matter here for Urshifu-Single Strike being better or worse against them. And common dark types, really the only new one that came with the format is going to be Incineroar. So there's not really a lot of good dark resist that got introduced in general here. So with the Single Strike form being on such a sharp increase in usage, what sort of sets can you expect to be fighting on this Pokemon? One of the most common sets is still honestly the Focus Sash set, and you'll see Terra typings like Dark, Stellar, and Poison all being ran. Your moves are pretty simple. It's always going to be Wicked Blow, Sucker Punch, Close Combat, and Detect on these types of movesets. And though you'll sometimes see small adaptations depending on the item, you're overall going to most likely see this specific Urshifu in play. Typically, Terra Dark is the primary Terra typing here though, as it boosts Wicked Blow damage immensely, making it a really good wall breaker to trade on these Focus Sash sets. But Stellar does have a nice benefit of buffing close combat damage, since Urshifu will typically only be getting off an attack or two. This does allow you to much better handle options like Incineroar that are still really prevalent in the format. And Terra Poison is a great way to preserve longevity against options like Fluttermane that might otherwise beat you before you can even get a single Wicked Blow off. So overall, all three of these Terra typings have established a really strong role on Urshifu Single. You can still see options like Choice Scarf and Choice Band in the format, but they don't give as much of a positive return on Single Strike in particular, since you typically want to click Wicked Blow twice. But these movesets will sometimes stitch Detect for options like Poison Jab and U-Turn, as Poison Jab is a great way around Terra Fairy Pokemon. Meanwhile, U-Turn is a great way to give momentum into other counterplay that might be able to beat your Urshifu checks. Urshifu is still a rather linear Pokemon, and it doesn't have the exactly dominating comps that the Rapid Strike form has, but it is still a presence that most teams, since they are disrespecting it, will now need to reconsider how they're going to be countering Urshifu due to the fact that your responses are vastly different. No longer can you just go for Terra Water or Dragon to beat the primary critting stab, and instead you now need to seek options like Fairy that would be neutral in a Rapid Strike. While the Single Strike form is fairly splashable on teams, you typically will use this on Trick Room, as it's a great lead option in order to pressure really early on, in order to enable Pokemon like Iron Crown, Blood Moon, and many other Trick Room threats in the late game. For example, we actually see Nicholas Donnelly, who reached second place at Charlotte Regionals, use an Urshifu Single Strike on his team, and with that or Ogerpon Hearthflame, you could typically counter a lot of the different Iron Hands counterplay in order to make it a prolific Trick Room sweeper. For example, Urshifu Single can definitely be used for Pokemon like Cresselia that would be bulky Psychics and wall through the entire set of Trick Room, or you might use Ogerpon Hearthflame instead in order to better beat Pokemon like Amoonguss, depending on the Terra typing. Urshifu Single does have a nice benefit though over other leads for Trick Room teams such as Fluttermane and Ogerpon Hearthflame due to the fact that you have a strong priority option in Sucker Punch, which does have a nice benefit of being a 70 base power priority move that can still be really benefited from your Terra Dark typing. This is a lot better for most Trick Room teams, as a lot of times you'll find Pokemon like Torkoal on Trick Room, which would weaken Aqua Jet from Rapid Strike, and even if you're not running a Sun component here, you still don't deal as much damage anyway with Aqua Jet compared to Sucker Punch. So despite the fact that you need to be a little bit smarter with the attack, it overall just is a stronger move nonetheless. But just how long will the Single Strike form manage to stay atop of the VGC metagame? I honestly think that the end of Single Strike's reign of terror is actually sooner rather than later, and this is mostly due to the fact that it had such an overtaking result at the Knoxville Regional. This is really huge because not only is it the first time all generation that Urshifu Rapid Strike did not make the top 12 since it's been legal, but it's also the first time that Urshifu Single Strike had such a dominating performance in the entirety of its running competitive, including in Sword and Shield. Because of this, I think a lot of counterplay is now going to start focusing on beating Urshifu Single Strike, as clearly this is the Pokemon to beat if you're making a serious run for day 2. I think we might start to see more Terra Fairy Ferrograph that might even switch back to Dazzling Gleam, or even Pokemon like Amoonguss now shifting their Terra type to Fairy in order to draw in Wicked Blow and force it to take more Rocky Helmet damage. This could actually be a great opportunity for Tornadus and Urshifu cores to rise again though, because now no longer are you going to have to worry about Amoonguss tearing into Terra Water, as Terra Fairy will not actually resist Surging Strikes, which is a huge benefit here for Urshifu Rapid. Not only this, but in order to combat Terra Fairy Ferrograph, you might see partners like Xianpao boosting the Surging Strikes damage even further, or even new Pokemon like Hearthflame Ogerpon being a nice partner, and many other options that could just break through Ferrograph altogether. So this definitely does mean that Urshifu Rapid might have a place going forward in order to overtake its results again. I don't exactly think that currently one form is objectively better than the other. I just think the current meta slightly skews to Single Strike, but I think this will change quickly, and during the course of Regulation F, I think we'll see a lot of ebbing and flowing between which Urshifu form is on top. Until we get a new regulation that truly greatly will change things, such as maybe a restricted format that will allow Kyogre in order to buff Rapid Strike's damage even further, or maybe a format format that just introduces some really weird gimmick that makes Single Strike pass greatly in usage. I think for now though, we're just gonna see that the two will continue the reign of terror, but this time I think it's gonna be as a unit rather than one completely overtaking the other. For now though, I'd like to use this as the time to really mention yet again that Game Freak 100% needs to make a way to identify these at Team Preview. I am just tired of losing most of my games on ladder because I predicted the wrong Urshifu form. It's gotta stop. They're both actually very viable on most of the same teams at this point, because a lot of teams are just gonna run Dual Dark with Incineroar Urshifu, or maybe even run a second Water type with their Urshifu Rapid. It's getting annoying. If you guys enjoyed today's video and you want to see more content like this, of course, make sure to like and subscribe, as I make a lot of different content like this every week. Also, if you enjoyed the editing in today's video, you got to check out Kurt. He did a phenomenal job on editing today's video, and he's currently uploading yet again, especially with the current WBG run that we are also a part of. Make sure you guys support him, as he makes some of the best content in the league, and it's really entertaining every week. Also, let me know what types of vids you guys want to see in the near future. While as of the time of this video going up, I'm currently actually on vacation. I'd love to see your guys' ideas for future content, as I can cover it when I get back and get a ton of your guys' ideas showcased. With all that said though, I'll see you guys in the next video where we'll be ranking every Paradox Pokemon in VGC. Until then, peace out guys.